So one of the biggest mysteries surrounding Resident Evil Requiem is Project Elpis. Even before the most recent trailer that highlighted this mysterious project or operation, Elpis has appeared multiple times throughout the marketing of RE9, mostly in the background. Rather, it was at a booth at Tokyo Game Show, printed on an official Resident Evil Requiem t-shirt, or a redacted file in the public demo. Elpis is clearly a major part of Requiem, and this most recent trailer only enhances that idea. So with Elpis being the biggest mystery surrounding Resident Evil Requiem and a secret truth buried deep under the ruins of Raccoon City, I figured now is the perfect time to talk about this mysterious project and list off anything and everything we know about Project Elpis thus far. Plus, I have a lot of insane theories involving Elpis, but not only Elpis, the people involved with Project Elpis, so stay tuned for that. Before we get started though, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more updates on Resident Evil 9, and check out the official Nerd Space game shop, which features custom-made artwork by the talented Demento Artworks. Right now, we have the Chris Boulder Punching Asshole collection available, but I have future designs in the works that feature Leon, Wesker, and Jill, so definitely check out the store and see if anything catches your attention. Link to the shop is down in the description of today's video. But without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. Starting with everything we know about Elpis before I go down my rabbit hole of theories and predictions for what this project is, looking at the term Elpis, we know that it comes from ancient Greece, as it means hope. Digging a little deeper about the meaning of Elpis specifically, it actually connects to the mythology of Pandora's box. I'm sure everybody knows about Pandora's box and how and when it opened, it released all kinds of suffering into the world. But what a lot of people don't realize is that not everything came flooding out of the box. There was one thing remaining in the box, and it was Elpis, aka hope. The Greek goddess of Elpis, aka the goddess of hope, is a very complicated one to understand fully, as the meaning behind Elpis can be interpreted in different ways. Some believe that Elpis is the belief of good things to follow, or even expectations. However, when it comes to the Resident Evil Requiem game, it seems that they are going with a different interpretation of what Elpis means. See, in the Famitsu interview following the Game Awards trailer, director of RE9, Nakanishi, commented on the Greek mythology surrounding Elpis and said that some interpret it as a symbol of worse things to come. Essentially, a sign of misfortune. Obviously, the fact that Nakanishi brings this up specifically tells us that whatever Elpis is in Resident Evil Requiem is very, very bad, but let's be real, we kind of expected as much. So now looking over the mentions of Elpis in the marketing prior to the most recent trailer, there's really only one major thing to note: the article about Raccoon City and its outbreak that specifically says, what is Elpis? The fact that Elpis is mentioned in this article about Raccoon City's outbreak specifically tells us that the public knows about Elpis, or at the very least, they know that Project Elpis exists. My theory about this article is that Grace Ashcroft, a reporter that survived the Raccoon City outbreak, was investigating Elpis before she was killed at Renwood Hotel, and she may have written this article prior to her death. Before her death, the files that Alyssa hid behind the painting provided evidence and details about what Elpis is, and that it was sanctioned by the US government itself. There's also probably evidence that confirms that the US government destroyed Raccoon City to hide the truth of Elpis and essentially protect their own asses. In fact, there's multiple pieces of information that confirms as much throughout the marketing of Resident Evil Requiem thus far. The first, as I already mentioned, is the t-shirt featuring the article about Elpis, and in that article it mentions the possibility of the government covering up Elpis with the destruction of Raccoon City. Then there's a file that can be found in the demo. This file has a lot of redacted words, but the gist of it pretty much implies that the Chief of Staff of the United States of America wanted to commence an operation that would lead to the destruction of Raccoon City for the sake of Elpis. So yeah, clearly the government knows about Elpis, and not only that, but they are willing to sacrifice anything and everything to protect it. So, long story short, Elpis is a government-sanctioned project or operation that's connected to the fall of Raccoon City, but it gets better. See, the only official villain revealed in the trailer so far is a man by the name of Victor Gideon. Now, from what we know about him, he's someone that has ties to Umbrella, and later in the trailer, he pretty much reveals that him and his team were involved with Project Elpis in some way. Not only did Gideon research whatever this Elpis is prior to the fall of Raccoon City, but it appears that he spent his entire life after that fateful day researching it and looking for a way to set it free. Yeah, as a matter of fact, he mentioned specifically in the trailer that Grace's blood is the key to setting Elpis free. Hence, this is his entire motivation for hunting down Grace Ashcroft. Clearly, Grace's mother, Alyssa Ashcroft, knows this, as she even tells her daughter moments before her death that she's been hiding something that she should have told her daughter sooner and promised to tell her later before, well, you know what happens next. Anyway, going back to Elpis and Victor Gideon. Since he's aware of Elpis and worked on it during his time with Umbrella, and the government ordered the destruction of Raccoon City for the sake of Elpis, it stands to reason that there were higher-ups within the government, including the chief of staff, that are directly connected to Victor Gideon. This explains the theory about Nathan Dempsey being a villain and setting Grace up to be kidnapped by Gideon. We know that he's acting on someone's order outside of the FBI because in the trailer, Leon appeared to be unaware of the FBI's involvement, and Grace was not reported as a missing person after she was kidnapped. Only the officer at the scene was. Clearly, Victor Gideon and Nathan Dempsey are working for the same organization based on this evidence. I'll talk more about my theory as to who they are both working for in a bit, and I promise you, I have a really good one that connects us back to Resident Evil 6 of all games, but first I want to talk a little more about Nakanishi's interview. See, during his interview, Nakanishi was asked specifically about Elpis and its involvement in the story of Requiem, and he confirms that Alyssa was killed because of Elpis, and more importantly, Leon S. Kennedy harbors a dark secret in regards to Elpis. Yeah, Leon is connected to Elpis in some way, and chances are that he probably already knows what Elpis is. Which honestly, this sparks all kinds of theories, but in terms of official bits of information revealed to us so far, this is everything we know about Elpis. Okay, theory time, meaning that if you were only here to hear about everything officially confirmed or mentioned in regards to Elpis for Resident Evil Requiem, and you don't want to hear about my insane theories, which there are some pretty crazy ones, now's the time to click off of this video now. Okay, assuming those people are gone, let's start with what is Elpis? Well, there's a few things that come to mind. The more obvious answer that I'm going with is that Elpis is essentially the successor to the progenitor virus. From the very start, the progenitor virus was far from perfect, and Umbrella worked years and years on perfecting it, hoping that one day it would not only be the key to immortality, but also advance the human race through generations and generations of forced evolution in a short period of time. During this research, Umbrella created BOWs, including the T virus and the G virus, to sell and finance their research on the progenitor virus. However, as far as we know, the progenitor virus was never perfected, at least not in the way that Oswald E. Spencer, the founder of Umbrella, set out to do all those years ago when he first met Mother Miranda. Looking at Resident Evil Requiem, clearly the infected individual somewhat resembles zombies that were originally infected with the T virus, with some noticeable changes. For example, we notice that there's some kind of black ooze-like infection with all of the victims in this game so far, and we also notice that these same victims appear to lose their teeth when transitioning into this new zombie. Essentially, my guess is that all the victims we've seen so far in the trailer are infected with Elpis at some point. But just like the progenitor virus, it's not perfected yet, and instead of advancing the human race, it's creating a new form of BOWs. Well, an improved version, but I'll get to that in just a moment. This is where Grace comes into play. For whatever reason, according to Victor Gideon, Grace's blood is apparently the key to setting Elpis free. Basically, I think that Grace's antibodies are the key to balancing the Elpis virus in a way that prevents them from becoming the mindless zombies that we've encountered in the trailer so far. Well, I say mindless zombies, but I think it's worth mentioning that the individuals infected with the Elpis appear to be a little more advanced than traditional zombies created from the T virus. I say this because one of them talks and another one of them wields a chainsaw, essentially giving us Las Plagas vibes. This enhances my theory about Elpis being a more advanced version of the progenitor virus that is close to the immortality virus that Spencer originally created or wanted to create when he founded Umbrella. As for why Grace's blood is the key to balancing the side effects of the Elpis virus, well, there's a few theories about that. So the first one that me and everybody else have been saying since the game was first revealed was the Daylight vaccine. Going all the way back to Raccoon City outbreak, we know that some of the survivors were cured of the T virus courtesy of a vaccine called Daylight. This vaccine was able to neutralize all remnants of the T virus in one's blood, and Alyssa Ashcroft, Grace's mother, was one of the people that took this vaccine before leaving Raccoon City. Meaning that as Alyssa's daughter, Grace now carries the same antibodies that protected her mother on that fateful day. Here's where things get interesting though. If Gideon and the people he worked for were only after someone carrying the same antibodies of the Daylight vaccine, why does he need Grace's blood specifically instead of Alyssa's blood, or the blood of any of the outbreak survivors for that matter? Perhaps it's because she bonded with the Daylight vaccine and the progenitor virus in a way that no other test subject has. Or, and here's my crazier theory for you guys, what if Grace is not a biological daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft? What if Grace Ashcroft is essentially a BOW, or a test tube baby created inside of an Umbrella lab prior to the destruction of Raccoon City? Then Alyssa Ashcroft and the other survivors of Raccoon City, including Leon S. Kennedy, found and helped pass Grace off as being the daughter of Alyssa to protect her for all of these years. It will explain why Gideon wants Grace's blood specifically, because she's the only successful test subject that bonded with Elpis when they were doing their experimentation under Raccoon City. However, no matter how hard they tried, Gideon and his team were unable to recreate the success with Grace Ashcroft, and instead they are seeking to get her blood so they can examine it and see how to recreate it again. This would also explain Nakanishi's comment about how Leon harbors a dark secret in regards to Elpis. It's because he already knew what it was and he helped hide her away from the people that were looking for her. I know, it's kind of a wild theory, but you guys know me, I love coming up with wild theories about Resident Evil. Okay, so moving on, and let's assume that all of this I just said is true. What organization would have the power and influence within the US government to manipulate things to cover up secrets and protect things they don't want other people to know about? Well, there's one group that comes to mind, and honestly, I don't think it's who you guys might think it is, because it's not Umbrella, it's not the Connections, it's the family. Yeah, there's a name that I'm sure a lot of you guys haven't heard in a while, and the ones that have heard of this name, you probably tried to forget it since they are connected to one of the worst Resident Evil games of all time, RE6. But for those that don't remember who the family are, it's a secret organization that predates just about anything in the lore of the franchise, dating all the way back to the early 1800s. For context, Mother Miranda hit the scene in the early 1900s, which means the secret organization that has been around even longer than she has. For context, Mother Miranda hit the scene in the early 1900s, I think, which means this secret organization has been around even longer than she has. Some of the original founders were ancestors to Derek Simmons, the main villain of RE6, who took charge of the organization when the president at the time tried to reveal the truth about Raccoon City. Of course, we assumed that the truth was simply the government's involvement with Umbrella, but as a good friend of mine, Center for Evil, once said in one of their videos, this secret truth could be connected to the secret truth in the original synopsis of Resident Evil Requiem. Well, that's kind of a tongue twister now that I think about it. Well, after the most recent trailer and Nakanishi's words, I'm assuming that this secret truth that President Benford tried to reveal to the world before his death was in regards to Elpis. Anyway, after Simmons failed to accomplish what he set out to do, the family left Simmons for dead and attempted to assassinate Carla before appointing a new leader and going into hiding. Outside of mentions and minor appearances in other forms of media, the family remained mostly hidden after the events of RE6. Well, because of how long the family has been around for, it's extremely possible that they still have a lot of influence and secret agents within the United States government and other governments all around the world, including Nathan Dempsey, Grace's superior that was responsible for sending her to Renwood Hotel to be captured by Victor Gideon. Okay, so now that you all know about my theory in regards to what is Elpis and who Victor Gideon and Nathan Dempsey are working for, there's one other theory that I want to connect everything to. Oswald E. Spencer. Yeah, I know, I just won't give up on this guy being the true main villain of RE9, but it doesn't matter how many times Capcom tries to tell me otherwise, I'm still going to die on this hill. I still think Spencer is the main villain of RE9. But hear me out for a second, because it's not that hard to believe. If we are to believe that it was the family that were mostly responsible for the interactions between the government, Umbrella, and Victor Gideon in regards to Project Elpis, then it kind of brings up an interesting question. Does this mean that Oswald E. Spencer was unaware of all of this, or was he essentially working with the family on Project Elpis? Well, I think he was. Yeah, I think he was working with the family during this time. Spencer was a very, very intelligent individual, and his motivations of attempting to advance the human race through forced evolution do, in a way, kind of line up with the same motivations of the family. Perhaps Spencer needed resources and protection from the US government, and he could only get that from a powerful organization that had a lot of influence within said government, aka the family. So let's continue acting as if Spencer was indeed working for or with the family, even all the way back to before the Raccoon City outbreak. It would mean that he would have knowledge of everything that high-ranking officials within the government had, and could control the flow of information through different organizations all around the world, including the BSAA. I say this because a friend of mine brought up the strange circumstances of how Spencer was found by Wesker. Shout out to Conjure Line for this one, but in the Lost in Nightmares DLC, there's a file that tells us that Spencer's butler, under orders from his master, leaked the information of Spencer's location to a female spy, who we can only assume was Ada Wong. Ada Wong, or female spy, then provided this information to Wesker, meaning that Spencer wanted Wesker to find him and potentially kill him, but it gets better than that. There was also another leak that told the BSAA as to Spencer's whereabouts, and my thought process is that Spencer and the family were both responsible for this. Why? I think it's because they wanted the entire world to think that Spencer was dead so that he could continue his research uninterrupted alongside Gideon and other scientists of Project Elpis. How did he accomplish this? Well, there's a whole lot of ways that he could have faked his death. Clone, body double, the family's resources, resurrection from the Megamycete. I could really do a whole video on different ways that Spencer could have faked his death or been resurrected after making the entire world think he was dead. Okay, so now let's fast forward to the events of RE6. We know that the family appointed a new leader after Simmons failed him. However, we know nothing about this new leader. My thought process is that maybe it's Oswald E. Spencer. Because of their obsession with Project Elpis, perhaps they wanted to allow someone like Spencer to lead them going forward, someone that has always worked well behind the curtain and in the shadows for decades. Which then brings me to the true villain of Resident Evil Requiem, Oswald E. Spencer. Oh, and yeah, I know that the dude is like 100 years old now, but hey, there are plenty of viruses in the Resident Evil universe that prevents and slows aging, so maybe Spencer found something that could make him younger. Just look at Jill Valentine. The effects of the T-virus, courtesy of her being affected by Nemesis, has slowed down her aging, proving that there are viruses in this universe that can have similar effects to what Spencer would need to be the true villain of Resident Evil Requiem, right? Finally, looking at the big picture and combining everything based on this theory being true, it all really does tie everything together, and I mean everything together. Leon is connected to Elpis because he's one of the people responsible for hiding Grace, the only test subject that successfully bonded with Elpis. That's why Gideon wants her blood, not Alyssa's or any of the other survivors of Raccoon City. The family, being connected to Resident Evil Requiem, not only has a connection with Leon, but also Sherry Birkin thanks to the events of RE6. I say this because a lot of people believe that Leon's new contact at DSO headquarters is Sherry Birkin, not Hunnigan. And a villain like Oswald E. Spencer brings a full circle moment for not only Leon, but any character featured in Resident Evil Requiem, creating one of the most lore-driven RE games to date. Yeah, I know this is a lot, and most of what I said is extremely unlikely, but hey, my favorite part about new RE games is the fact that I get to make crazy theories like this one and think outside of the box from time to time. Anyway, I hope you guys had a lot of fun watching this video because I had a lot of fun making this video. So let me know what you think of my theories in today's video. Also, drop your crazy theories in the comments down below, as I might mention it in a future video, who knows. Plus, I'd love to hear about what you guys think as to what Elpis is. Regardless, thanks for watching, and I'll see all of you guys on the next episode of Nerd Space Games. Take care.